Welcome to another edition of Comic Fever. I am your host, the Dynamite. Today we will be taking a look at the rest of the graphic novels that came in my Bento box. And up second, as Captain America was first, is this story, Captain Midnight. Now the story opens with the U.S. Air Force doing a routine check of the Bermuda Triangle, searching for UFOs, enemy aircrafts, yada yada yada. When all of a sudden, the aircraft is hit by something, and it has to make an emergency landing back on the aircraft carrier. And what is it that hits that something? None other than Captain Midnight. And for a while, the the officer of the ship can't get his mind around the fact that it's Captain Midnight, because Captain Midnight was a fairy tale. Captain Midnight was a hero of the 1950s. Yet what is he doing in this time? Well, it seems that he was in the 1950s and he was flying around, and all of a sudden he got pulled through a time warp. But as the story goes on, we learned that not only was he pulled through a time warp, but so was his arch nemesis. But then there's a twist. His arch nemesis somehow managed to get pulled into the 1980s, where she posed as her own granddaughter and became a billionaire weapons industrialist. Now Captain Midnight has to fight his way through a new time, get back at an old enemy who is no longer doing, uh, who is no longer the bad guy that she used to be, and somehow find something on her, while at the same time knowing that she has found out about him and is tracking him. And to make matters worse, he killed her father, so she is out for revenge. This was a great book. Uh, Brought to us by Dark Horse Comics. And was written by and uh, artwork done by Joshua Williamson, Fernando Dagnias, and all around it was a great book. Definitely worth the read. And if you see this book at all, if somehow it's managed to make it to your comic stores, I would pick this book up. Next up, Terminator Revolution. Now this book picks up in the future. John Connor is married, and him and his wife, her name being Kara, are fighting the good fight, fighting against the robots. And all of a sudden, John Connor gets sucked into a time loop. And he ends up back in 1996, where his younger self and his mother has just defeated the Skynet for the second time and eluded Judgment Day, or so they thought. Meanwhile, not only does John Connor get sent to this past, or present, or however you want to look at it, the Terminator that has sent them there somehow gets sucked in through the same wormhole. Good book, really full of action, and does a great job of, I think, of following the narrative of just coming off of Judgment Day and kind of combining Judgment Day with Salvation in a way. A good book. Mostly, if you're a Terminator fan, I would suggest this book. Otherwise, I don't know if this book would be for you, but I enjoyed it. It comes from us by Dynamite Entertainment. It is rated T for T plus, suggested for teens and up, and it does have a lot of the blood and destruction that the Terminator movies had. Last but not least is the team of the Valiant, which, funny enough, is brought to us by Valiant Comics. Yes, brought to us by Valiant Comics. In it, we are introduced to Gilad and something called the Geomancer, which is basically a kind of a necromancer, but in reverse. She deals more with life, and he, if it's a he, deals more with life and stuff like that. But first it starts off with them on their own. And the Geomancer is not just one person, but is kind of like a bloodline. Whereas...
I may be outside giving your hand. If you need me, call me on the phone.
Alright. Which... the Geomancer is a sort of a bloodline in which every new descendant is a Geomancer. And so first off, we start off on them on their own. And they are fighting what is known as the immortal enemy. Now, the immortal enemy it's strange because, in a way, it's kind of like a Terminator-esque type villain. It is not killing out of malice, more it's killing out of that's what it feels it has to do. Um, but how it does it is it takes on everyone's greatest fear. But as the time goes on, and by the way, Gilead is also an immortal of sorts. Um, where the Geomancer has to be a different, or it doesn't have to be, but is a descendant of other Geomancers. Gilead stays the same person, so he too is immortal. Along the way, they pick up the different team members and form a team to fight this immortal enemy. Now, the way this mortal enemy goes about killing is kind of interesting, because what it does is it um, it can get into your mind, and it makes your worst fears come true. Um, it was a good book. Uh, it was a good meld of the philosophical with high-packed action. If anything, it had a very good blend. Uh, Definitely a pickup. Um, I didn't see any recommended books. You know that if you pick them up, it would contain this book, but or what was in this book. But I would definitely try to find this graphic novel if you could. Um, this has been my look at the contents of Bento. We have gone through the past. We fought for our present, and we fight for the future. And in each of these books, that's exactly what we got. This box's theme was time. And each book taught us that time is precious, no matter where that is. I am your host, as said in the beginning. I am the Dynamite Crip. I thank you for watching. See y'all later.